everyone. Thanks for coming today again. So I'm the Technology Director at Impression, currently looking after some of our more technology and data-led services. So I couldn't resist the opportunity to talk to you guys all about what's happening and all the challenging headwinds that are, coming at us in terms of how we optimize and report on our campaign activity. There's a lot of changes happening in the industry right now. We've got, as hopefully everybody is now fully aware, we've got the sort of deprecation of third-party cookies. Google Chrome has been the latest to join that, and they've started rolling out their reduction in the effectiveness of those cookies just earlier this year. We're continuing to see more advertising and reporting happening relating to walled gardens. So by this I mean mobile devices, applications, things like that, where actually getting the tracking, the telemetry out of those devices and out of those apps back into reporting platforms is getting harder, or the windows are sort of reducing around that reporting ability. And we've also just got this continuing consumer behaviour where we've got consumers constantly using additional devices for their research or perhaps their discovery and then conversion. And because of the durability of cookies, when people are revisiting even on the same device, joining those separate sessions and paths together is getting more and more difficult. So increasingly we're seeing more more new users who have actually probably been exposed to the advertising previously. We just can't close that attribution loop, and that's something I'll be talking about in a second. Today we're going to talk around, the next step in marketing attribution. Many of you, well, hopefully not too many people in the room, will be using last click on a day-to-day basis, and you would have taken somewhat of this journey. I won't make anyone raise their hands for each of these, but you'll be familiar now that most platforms, obviously in platform, are pushing to use data-driven attribution, and that's because it can take on board additional signals, some of the AI, ML, additional data sets that are available to us. Hopefully, there's an element of experimentation happening within your accounts as well, and generally your approach to how you're buying your media. But if we take this one step further, beyond digital attribution and experimentation, which is helping to validate this, the next step really to consider is looking at media mix modeling, and that's something we're going to touch on a little bit here to explain, show how we've helped a few clients with this work, and hopefully have some good chats on the round tables about this as well. So the trio of attribution, as I like to call it, is looking at multi-touch attribution. So this is everything you're familiar with, Google Analytics, in-platform data. We're going to talk a little bit about incrementality testing, which is one of the many types of testing. The general bucket that we're going to talk around relating to testing. We're particularly going to talk around geographic-based holdout testing. And then we'll talk a little bit about media mix modeling as well, and sort of the interplay between how tests and models can help each other get better over time and to lead to higher marketing effectiveness. Starting with the multi-touch attribution. So I'm going to take you through each of those three circles separately. Really, I'm going to sort of show you 6 things here. They're on the A4 page on your desk as well. But what we're looking at is closing the attribution loop. So with all the headwinds and challenges I've just talked around, particularly they are impacting the efficacy of your multi-touch attribution. So what we're trying to do is close that loop where the loop has been broken by some of those technology and privacy headwinds. Consent mode is probably something you've all dealt with very recently at the latest, if you've not been sort of able to move on that sooner. But what this allows us to do is essentially comply with the Digital Markets Act, which is the new legislation that's sort of really set the deadline. But it allows us to honour consent a little bit more. And in the background, you'll see platforms have allowed for anonymous signals to still be sent to platforms. And without implementing consent mode properly, those anonymous signals don't happen, and therefore you're sending less data back to platforms. So this is a great way to stay compliant and continue to get that data in your platforms. Server-side tagging is a great way of closing the loop as well, particularly if the conversion event happens after the fact, or if you need to update the value, or if your revenue is coming through a subscription or anything like that. There's multiple ways that you can sort of take the data away from just the client, the browser, which is the area where those challenges are sort of showing themselves, and sending it directly to the platforms in the background. And that allows us to sort of avoid challenges and also take advantage, basically, of being able to send additional data back to platforms. Great examples here would be if we look at how browsers are blocking the use of cookies or even blocking the use of some of the tracking to, say, analytics platforms. You can sort of take that job away from your web browser and let your servers do it instead. That means if the web browsers are sort of preventing you from sending that information, you can obviously skirt around that. Enhanced conversions and also conversion imports are sort of two different ways, slightly similar, slightly different, where you can send additional data to ad platforms. Some of these will be your click IDs, again, if you're wanting to ensure that you're closing that loop if any part of that loop is broken. And with enhanced conversions, you can also send hashed first-party information as well. So again, if that loop is broken, or maybe the time lag is introduced between sort of the ad click and the eventual conversion, you can send hashed first-party information. Great example here is if a signed-in user does a Google search, finds your brand through a sort of top-of-funnel style keyword, on a different device or at a later date, they then convert, but they use the same email address for which they were signed in for. That's a great example of how you're closing that loop. I've got another example of that in a second. Mobile measurement platforms, something I'll definitely cover on the tables if it's appropriate for anyone here, particularly if you're running like app install campaigns, things like that on search ads. And customer data platforms as well. Many of you will be using CRM or like an order management system, or maybe even using the back end of your content management system of your website to manage orders. The customer data platform is a centralized singular customer view which consumes all that type of information, also typically web browsing behavior, as well as sort of offline events as well. So that might be subscription information that happens after the fact. All of that information can be combined, and off the back of that, you can then send additional data back to ad platforms. You can also use it for building custom audiences as well. There's lots of segmentation available within those platforms. This one's a bit of the ugly duckling in the group of 6 here. But again, the information's on the platform, and I think in the medium-term future, this is a topic that you'll probably start seeing a lot more of as people generally, to solve this challenge, are starting to want to take control a little bit more of their first-party data when they're activating campaigns. Here's my example. So there's a few cases where this might be correct, but let's say we've got 1,000 people clicking on an advert. This is a lead gen sort of B2B scenario. We might have 30 marketing qualified leads. You would obviously, from that form submission, send that information back to your advertising and analytics platforms. And in, I guess, the good old days, maybe that's it, that's all we'd do. But actually, if we take it one step further, we know that more happens to those leads. So we'll be able to take the 30 MQLs down to 10 sales qualified leads. That might then actually result in 5 deals, and that might happen, say, 60 days later. We'd then also post that information back so that we can kind of optimize to the correct value that this initial campaign has actually delivered in like pounds and pence. And really, many of you will be familiar with how Google at least calls this value-based bidding, but there's, I guess, a general approach is that you're bidding towards the value of the end customer as opposed to just the marketing sort of stage here, which obviously there's an inefficiency gap there, and we'll be able to remove that inefficiency gap in how we're able to optimize and bid for more customers who look like these in the future. I've already mentioned the recurring e-commerce subscription model. Obviously, if it was an e-commerce, the first purchase might happen here, all the other purchases happen later. So you'll be able to post that back for a period of time. CRM deals is a great example of what I've just ran through. And we've also got some scenarios as well where, particularly in like finance and insurance, if something needs to be underwritten, it might only be a gap of like a couple of hours, but because the consumer's not on your website anymore, you don't have that context, you'd have to close the loop through a different methodology. Just some examples there. So that was all multi-touch attribution, or your digital analytics. Hopefully some of those things you'll be familiar with, some of them might be slightly new. So yeah, looking forward to talking a little bit more about those. Testing is not new, but it's something that's had a fairly low adoption rate to date. Some of the tests you might have been exposed to in the past will be like platform-based tests as well, so they'd typically be minimum spends. Some of you may have been fortunate enough to use those, some of you may not have. But the benefit of testing is that it gives you accurate causal information. So you can say without doubt that an action has led to an outcome. There's a slight statistical error sort of range you'd put to that, but you can essentially say with confidence that this has caused this. With testing, you can confirm the value of your existing activity and also prove the value of your new activity as well. So this is great, particularly if you're going through a period of expansion, or even this first one here, if there's a challenge potentially from, say, finance or global team or whatever it might be, you can run an incrementality test to understand whether or not that activity genuinely is providing the value that it sort of purports to say it will. The results here will always be different to the results from multi-touch attribution. They'll always also be different from the results from media mix modeling, which we'll cover in a second as well. But the truth is between the three. And that, along with good strategy and good future planning, will allow you to sort of unlock the challenges and grow your business that way. There is the thing with testing is it is slightly disruptive, not to your whole audience, but if you're running a sort of geography-based test, then clearly there is one geography that's going to see more, less, none, or say double of the advertising exposure that they perhaps otherwise would see if they're in one of the control regions. Got a great example of what this would look like. So you'll be able to pick sort of control and control and treatment regions and map them, something like this. It could be electoral states, could be counties, cities, different levels, depending on the granularity and targeting of each platform you're using. Importantly, you can answer questions around cannibalization of different channels. It can also answer brand bidding questions, which I'm sure everyone has probably crossed at some point in their life as well, but also help you understand whether an additional performance channel on top of the existing performance mix, whether that would lead to incrementality, or essentially, are you just going to target the same users again, and the platforms will be sort of fighting to take the credit for that. When you run an experiment, you'll get a graph that looks something like this, where you have pre-treatment, and then in your treatment area, you'd see the graph sort of peak up or dip down in terms of performance. This is sort of normalized, and then you'll be able to actually put a pound value against whether or not that activity has actually led to an increase. And obviously from there, you can sort of infer return on ad spend and all that stuff too. Finally, the third in the trio is media mix modeling. You'll be familiar with everything here because this is typically what you see from your multi-touch digital attribution. We also have always known this other stuff is happening, but we've not always, I guess, as marketers, had access to types of tools that will be able to consider all of these all at the same time. So media mix modeling allows us to take into account various media channel information, online and offline, and also additional context as well. So were you running a sale at the time, for example? Is there an effect of seasonality? Are competitors running a particular type of activity at the same time that might lead to increased sort of category demand or reduced your own brand demand, for example? And events, other bits and bobs as well. Lots and lots of maths happens. So like a reinforcement, you could call it machine learning approach, takes part. So there's sort of tens, hundreds of thousands of iterations to try to understand the correlation between certain peaks in one channel or one event or any of these different context variables, and then the resulting impact on revenue. This is just one visualization. I've got a couple more in a moment. But importantly, this is correlation, not causation. So previously we've had, with incrementality testing, we're proving causation. So one thing has caused this because it's controlled for, it's the only thing that you're changing. Here we're looking at correlation because there's just so many different things. We're trying to correlate everything all at the same time to understand, taking into account time lags and your diminishing returns from overinvestment in certain channels, to explain where have those incremental sales come from over a period of time and how's that shifting. Here we've pulled out some of the digital media but you could pull out certain variables. Everything else gets lumped into the base to take the, basically to say, well, without these things that we've pulled out, what would have happened anyway, loosely over a period of time. Insights look something like this. So you'll get a sort of a slightly wider error bar with a point estimate of what the ROAS is for each channel. That's typically going to be different to what the channel platforms are reporting themselves. It'll also be different to what your analytics is reporting as well. Hopefully you've got some incrementality testing going at the same time, or have done some previously, to say, well, before we run this model, we know for sure that, say, TikTok's incremental ROAS is at least 4.5. Therefore, we can constrain for using the type of statistics that are available out there to fit this model better. Where you've got wide bars here, that implies that there's a slight bit of uncertainty in the model. So these are the types of platforms that you would test. This is a bad example. This is just mocked up. Some would be wide, some would be narrow. The wider ones are the ones where you'd want to sort of run some testing. Some of the other benefits of running media mix modeling, well, many benefits. You can do media mix sort of forecasting and scenario planning. So you could look at over a set period of time that's already happened. If you had a different media mix over that medium-ish sort of period of time, if it was optimal, what would the revenue lift have been? And then you can also extrapolate this forward as well into the future to look at, well, if I shift towards an optimal media mix, then what should my revenue look like moving forward? A couple more slides and I'll be done and I'll hand you over. But it's always good to see, I guess, companies such as Harvard Business Review sort of stating their opinion on this type of approach. MMM and experiments, in this case I've talked a lot about incrementality testing, is essentially the gold standard in how we measure without data. We've added today also the multi-touch attribution, which is where we do have the data as well, because we understand that brands are on a journey. Some of you may be using last click for some reporting, and obviously it's a journey to get to the point where you're able to reach this level of activity. There's also a quick word as well around different solutions that are out there. This is a really good read. My opinion aligns with it. I'd really recommend everyone forms their own opinion on it. But there are some like AI type solutions that purport to do varying types of media mix modeling on the internet. I think they're really good for simple media mixes, particularly digital only ones. But this article goes on to say they basically lack nuance for being able to do lots of like heavy offline investment considerations alongside your digital media as well. So potentially something to read and to be able to form your own opinion on, because there's plenty of these tools emerging at the moment as well. Everyone probably sees AI on LinkedIn every day. So yeah, certainly worth a read. Hopefully these are all in front of you already as well. But key takeaways I hope you've got from my talk is that you'll be able to understand the technical limitations and how through overcoming those technical limitations in the digital attribution, you can close that reporting loop. So there's various different types of technologies. They're all on the top half of the sheets, the measurement checklists on your tables. So you can understand which of those might be appropriate for you and your business. Testing is the causal way of proving the value of a media channel. Slightly disruptive and it's limited to one channel, but it does take into account externalities and can be a really valuable sort of next step from multi-touch attribution into starting an experimentation approach at your business. And then finally, media mix modeling, probably a slightly longer term consideration, and it certainly helps to have done some testing first. It's almost like a 1, 2, 3 step. But this allows you to take into account tons of internal and external variables to understand over a period of time which channels and which factors have contributed to your sales. And some of those contributions may not have come from work you've done. They might come from externalities as well. So it's a great way to, I guess, hopefully take away the 3 key steps from the 3 types of attribution we've talked about. I shall hand over to Nick to take you through some more applied examples.